And welcome back. Enterprise Community Partners is a not-for-profit that's existing to make a good home possible for the millions of families without one. New York City Mayor Eric Adams recently released the Housing Our Neighbors Blueprint Plan in an effort to tackle the city's affordable housing crisis. Joining us now and sharing more, we've got the Vice President and New York Market Leader of Enterprise Community Partners, Baaba Halm, and we thank you, Baaba, for being with us.
Thank you, Daren. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you today.
Yes, and so as the mayor's released this plan, I just want to get your take on this plan. And first of all, what will the plan entail?
Well, the plan is very exciting. It's the first time in the city's history that the mayoral administration has released a comprehensive plan that includes its priorities around public housing, its priorities around homelessness, and how it intends to steward and increase the city's housing supply and make sure housing quality remains available throughout the city.
When we talk about housing, obviously homelessness is a big issue in New York City. Not only homelessness, but just the lack of affordable housing. When you look at the landscape of housing in New York City, how do you see it at present?
The city is at a critical juncture. It has been able to benefit from the interest of people in living in New York City because of all it offers, its economic opportunities, its community cultural life opportunities. And so if you look at the city's history, it's grown in population over the last decade, but the city's housing supply hasn't kept pace with that increasing interest that people have in the city. And so that has contributed to our housing shortage. It's also contributed to homelessness. And so this is the critical juncture for the city, how it meets the housing needs across the full landscape of city residents.
So when we look at the mayor's plan, for somebody who may not be so familiar, how does it go about really addressing some of the critical areas that I think you have definitely had some concerns about?
So as you mentioned, in talking about Enterprise is a national nonprofit that has a New York office, and our goals is to make a good home possible for the millions of families without one. Much of Enterprise's interests are reflected in the plan, and we're so very proud of the work that we've done in partnership with the city and with communities across the city to make affordable housing a priority and to make it available. And so the plan captures a lot of our work across housing quality in terms of bringing new housing units online by working with faith-based organizations to actualize the potential that their vacant land offers, by talking about supporting community land trusts, which are new vehicles to bring long-term permanent affordable housing online. There's so much in the plan that reflects Enterprise's priorities and the fact that it's comprehensive in nature, that it talks about the need to protect public housing, to invest in public housing, that it offers strategies on how to support homeless residents and to get them into permanent housing, and that it captures housing quality related issues and how to increase the housing supply and the long term.
What have you been hearing with boots on the ground about the housing crisis, particularly for those who are tenants and residents of New York City who've been struggling for so long time? You know, New York City is known as this booming city and state, and we're a booming city within a booming state. But yet and still, there's so many people who, when it comes to the issue of housing, this becomes the primary concern for so many people. And it's not just the primary concern. It really boils down to survival in some cases.
You're absolutely right that there is this economic crisis that compounds the housing crisis, and that wages haven't kept pace with inflation, with other increasing costs. We're in this acute period where, as a city, we're continuing to rebound from COVID-19 and the economic damage that COVID-19 did. We're also in this climate where there's inflation across the board, inflation on everyday costs, from food to childcare to transportation to the basic necessities. And when wages haven't kept pace with inflation, haven't kept pace with other increasing costs, households become more and more squeezed. And so the pain that families are feeling about how to maintain their households and the pinch that housing costs eat into their income is real. And we are seeing that across the city, even in a city like New York, as you said, that is booming within a larger state, that is booming, that when you look at everything that how it adds up together, there's real hardship for families in terms of the affordability needs and what the options are here in the city to meet those affordability needs, housing affordability needs.
I know one of the highlights of the mayor's proposed plan is the funding of city FEPs, and talk to me. It's going to be funded in full. I think a lot of people are excited about that. For our viewers, make us aware a little bit about city FEPs, and then what this funding will actually be able to continue to increase.
So City FEPS is a city housing voucher program which helps tenants pay a portion of their rent. And so the excitement about it being fully funded is that more households will now be able to get access to that voucher and to that benefits and to support and to pay for housing across the city. And that is a real testament to this administration's interest in supporting households in need and making sure that families that need help to pay for housing can rely on a resource like City FEPS.
And for you, obviously, the mayor's plan comes and it's a shot in the arm for a lot of people who've been with boots on the ground. For Enterprise, talk to me about your work right now, because I know that you're also doing some things in terms of trying to create affordable places to live. So for some of our viewers who may not be so familiar with the work of Enterprise, share with us.
So Enterprise is a multifaceted organization. And so we support community through a number of different avenues. We provide capital, that is financing for developers who are looking to build or rehabilitate housing across the city. And in fact, we're very excited that just in the last several weeks, we were involved in a ribbon cutting at a project right in the Bronx, the Reverend Trinity Senior Apartments, which is bringing 163 apartments for low-income residents. And a portion of that will be reserved for folks who are formerly incarcerated. And that's an example of the work that Enterprise does, providing financing to developers to bring critical affordable housing units in the pipeline and available to low-income households and households who are looking for affordable housing. So that's just an example of what some of the things that we do.
Can you give me a little bit of a walkthrough as to your experience with COVID-19? Because we talk about how it's further exacerbated certain things. But from your perspective, how has it further exacerbated the issue of housing and the homeless crisis?
Well, I mean, as a result of COVID-19, overnight, not only was our city shut down, but many businesses were shut down. And overnight, thousands of folks lost their income, the very income that they relied on to make their rent payments, to provide food and shelter. And so what Enterprise did is, in support of the city, is we, working with other partners, including private partners and government, we launched the Project Parachute, which was a COVID-related eviction support program, which provided financial resources and connections to critical recovery services to folks impacted by COVID. But COVID also taught us an important lesson, through our advocacy around the state's emergency rental assistance program and the challenges of tapping into that program, that the need for support and understanding how residents are being impacted day in and day out is critically important. And again, COVID-19, as much as we would love to say that it is done, still is having continuing effects in the city. And so we are paying close attention to households that are at the risk of losing their housing, and the threat and of eviction because of, rental arrears that they haven't been able to pay or are continuing to climb as we go through these various waves of COVID resurgence.
So here we are with the mayor's Housing Our Neighbors Blueprint, and we know that this comes as a shot in the arm for many people to be able to deal with this particular issue. When we talk about the mayor's plan of dealing with housing and more particularly leveling out the playing field, are you optimistic that we can see some things happen in short term?
I'm very optimistic. I think it is encouraging that the administration has launched such an ambitious, fully encompassing plan. You know, a plan of this magnitude absolutely has to have the related resources for its implementation. And so we are excited to work with the administration to prioritize all of the strategies and the ideas that the plan reflects. And so it is going to be important, Daren, in the short term to understand the resources and the administration's priorities within the overall plan.
So for you, if we could put you in the driver's seat for a minute, what would you say would be the immediate need that has to occur as a result of all of this?
I think we can't keep our eye off of the fact that there are still thousands of households who are housing insecure because of the threat of an eviction, because of arrears that accumulated during COVID. We know that the federal government has not allocated any new resources to the state or to the city to support those households. We know that there are thousands of eviction cases being filed every week in every county across the state. And so there really are a lot of households who are at the brink of homelessness, who can face eviction at any point. And really what the city can do with its resources, what the city can do in terms of understanding and supporting those households is really critically important. And that remains a priority for Enterprise as we think about how we tackle homelessness, how we prevent homelessness, and how we support households who may be in need.
Any fear on your part? Because I know that the eviction moratorium is now over, and there's so many people who were caught in the middle who really relied on that eviction moratorium to be able to make it through. I've heard and talked to several people who said, listen, now that this moratorium is over, we might expect to see many more people in the street. And we even, some people would say even possibly potentially thousands.
Yes, and so it is true, Daren, that that fear is still very real. There are thousands of eviction filings that are being initiated every week. What is really keeping things at bay, even though the state's eviction moratorium has been lifted, there has been this, if you apply for emergency rental assistance, that ERAP program, that it puts, and while that application is pending, your eviction action is kind of stayed. It's on hold until the state decides whether or not they're going to approve an application for emergency rental assistance. And the state is many months behind in terms of processing and going through all of those applications. But assuming no new funds from the federal government or no new funds from the state in support of households that accumulated arrears, there really are thousands of families who are at the threat of losing their homes and possibly becoming homeless.
And for yourself, before we wrap up, for those people who want to know more about Enterprise, are you solely with New York City? Is it the state? How many? Where does your client base stretch to?
Enterprise New York is statewide. We have our principal offices in New York City, but we work with municipalities and partners across the state. We finance projects across the state. We provide, innovative programs and policy advocacy across the state.
Well, we want to thank you, Baaba, for being with us and sharing a little bit about what's going on, and we're going to be looking forward to seeing how the Housing Our Neighbors Blueprint actually rolls out. The mayor is saying that it's a must-do thing, and many people in the community are really waiting with bated breath to see how we can help to be able to solve a problem that has gripped our community for so long. But Baaba Halm, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Daren. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk with you today.
All righty. Well, we want you to stay with us because guess what? We have more here on the Social Justice Forums. We'll continue right after this.